Welcome to another episode of Islands in the League, our exclusive YouTube series presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. In this episode, we will be revealing our first annual All-Alfred team. I'll have an explainer on that in a second. Plus, we're going to continue our Build Around series. This time, I'm going to build a modern NBA team around a Boston Celtics legend. And, as always, we'll be joined by our resident sports betting expert, Josh Appelbaum. This is Islands in the League. Let's go. All right, last season, it was around this time that I introduced the concept of the Alfred. Everybody knows Batman and Robin, and so often in the NBA, we talk about Batmans and Robins, right? The 1A and the 1B. And I voiced my support for the need for the Alfred. The need for the supporting character. I always go back to that pivotal scene in Christopher Nolan's classic film, Batman Begins. Ra's al Ghul has set Batman's house on fire. Wayne Manor is on fire. And as Bruce Wayne meanders about the home, a beam falls on his chest, and he's trapped in a burning building. And who comes in to save the day? It's Alfred. Batman cannot succeed without Alfred. Robin cannot succeed without Alfred. In the NBA, in a team sport, you need Alfreds. Alfreds are the supporting characters, just like Michael Caine is one of the all-time supporting actors in film history.
I don't want to bury you, Batman.
I'm not going to bury another Batman.
Another Batman? How many Batmans has he been burying?
Anyone who has followed this channel over the last few years knows that I have a deep affinity for the basketball player named Derrick White. And for the purposes of our first annual All-Alfred team, I would just like to state that Derrick White is not eligible for the All-Alfred team. He was the original Alfred. He is the ultimate Alfred, of course, but he is immortalized in Alfred mythology at this point. His jersey hangs in the Alfred Hall of Fame. So he is not eligible to make the first annual All-Alfred team. Again, being a great Alfred is correlated to success. You are supporting the star player. You are starring in your role. And that is what leads to team success. I'm going to name 10 players. There's not a first team and a second team. There's just one 10-person team for our first annual All-Alfred team. And all of these players are in the playoffs. I'll start with the guy that just won Sixth Man of the Year, Nas Reed from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Nas had an awesome season. He was number 14 in defensive win shares. For the season, he shot over 41% from three. As a starter, 14 games played as a starter this season, he averaged over 17 points and 7 rebounds and shot over 42% from three. When the Timberwolves needed someone to come in and save the day and help them secure a top seed in the Western Conference, when Karl-Anthony Towns went down, Nas Reed stepped up, just like Alfred stepped up in that burning building. I've actually got a second Timberwolves player on my first annual All-Alfred team. This is someone that we've mentioned many times on this podcast. He's been called the nicest player in the NBA. I've disputed that for years, but I want to honor him with a lifetime membership in the All-Alfred category. This is a guy who's made an All-Star game, should have made many more. And as he's gotten towards the end of his career, he's found a perfect fit in Minnesota. I'm talking about Mike Conley. Mike Conley is the captain of that ship, steering, allowing Anthony Edwards space to star, operating in pick and roll with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Mike Conley shot over 44% from three this year. He had over a 4-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. The Timberwolves are not a top 3 seed in the Western Conference without Nas Reed and Mike Conley. New York Knicks had a number of guys step up, and I can make an argument for several of their players to make the All-Alfred team this season. Josh Hart, one of the best rebounding guards in the NBA, if not the best rebounding guard in the NBA. Led the NBA in rebounds for any player 6'6" or shorter. He is a kamikaze on the court. He's a kamikaze in transition. He's a one-man fast break at times. We've seen him step up in the playoffs, but it was during the regular season when the Knicks had a number of injuries when Josh really stepped into his role as an Alfred. 6 triple-doubles after January 29th. He was number 16 in the entire NBA in defensive win shares. Josh Hart, congratulations. This is your first NBA award. I think what's interesting about the All-Alfred team is a lot of these guys won't get mentioned on national debate shows. And sometimes even when they are mentioned, people mispronounce their names. The next player on my All-Alfred team for 2024 is Isaiah Hartenstein. Hartenstein was awesome on both ends of the floor, perfectly filled a role for the New York Knicks, a hub on offense, one of the best push shots in the lane, but it was defensively where he really stood out for me. Number 19 in defensive win shares in the entire NBA, 7th best field goal percentage allowed at the rim, great rim protection, one of 3 players to have 85 steals and 85 blocks this year. And how about this? How about this little nugget of a stat for you? The Alfred, right? He's there to support the Batman. Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein, Jalen Brunson. They were the most efficient trio in the entire NBA this season. 17.7. That was their net efficiency for this year. If that doesn't scream Alfred, I don't know what does. Number 5 on the list this year is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. KCP, outstanding defensive season for the Denver Nuggets. And again, you're talking about a guy who fills a role. He provides spacing on offense, shot over 39% from 3 this year, constantly tasked with guarding the other team's primary ball handler. He's the point of attack defender for the Denver Nuggets. I voted him as an all-defense player. A big reason why the Denver Nuggets were a top 10 defense this year was because of KCP. Congratulations, KCP. And honestly, I had a really hard time not putting one of KCP's teammates on this list as well, and that was Aaron Gordon. All right, the next 5 guys on my list for the All-Alfred team for 2024. Let's start with Bobby Portis from the Milwaukee Bucks. Had him in the top 3 for 6th man of the year. Bobby Portis averaged close to 14 points a game, over 7 rebounds. For me, Bobby and a couple other guys on this list, Josh Hart being one of them, a couple more to come, they provide something beyond just stats. They provide a spirit. They provide an identity. Bobby Portis is like the mayor of Milwaukee. Bobby Portis gets the crowd going. He's a great teammate. He's not afraid to get in scuffles. A big part of the identity of this team is Bobby Portis. Another guy that I think of when I think of spirit and identity and energy is TJ McConnell. I think what's interesting, TJ McConnell started out the year as the 3rd string point guard for the Indiana Pacers. He had DNPs this year. You go through even early in the season, he had games where he played 6 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 minutes. He only averaged 18 minutes a game this season for the Indiana Pacers. And yet he averaged over 10 points a game, over 5.5 assists a game. He is a spark plug. He's a energy shifter. He's a game changer. And he is on my All-Alfred team for 2024. Another guy we've given a lot of love to on this podcast, Herb Jones from the New Orleans Pelicans. Just an absolute menace and a wrecking ball on the defensive end. Also shot really well from 3 this year. It's interesting when I think about what an Alfred is. It's someone you need. If I'm building a team, I need a guy like Herb Jones on my team. Another guy that I think of that I would love to have on my team who does a lot of the same things that Herb Jones does and also provides a level of grit and toughness is Lou Dort from the Oklahoma City Thunder. Doesn't get a lot of headlines, plays hard every night, spent as much time guarding all-stars as anybody in the NBA this season. Oh, and he also shot over 39% from 3 on over 5 attempts a game. A big reason, beyond just the stars for OKC, a big reason why Oklahoma City had a top 5 defense and ended up with the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. The last spot on the first annual All-Alfred team goes to Grayson Allen. Now, I know Phoenix had a disappointing regular season relative to expectations, but Grayson Allen was just fantastic. We talk about providing spacing. This guy led the entire NBA in 3-point percentage was well into the high 40s for most of the season, ended up shooting over 46% from three, was rewarded with a nice contract extension. Grayson Allen, the last member of the first annual Old Man in the Three, all Alfred team.
I've buried 14 Batmen
I've buried
so far,
14
and
Batmen.
their little pointy ears
I'm
in a
not
box.
going to bury another nylon cloak with pointy ears that people wear at birthday parties.
I really enjoyed doing this build-around series. So far, we've built a modern NBA team around Michael Jordan, and we built a modern NBA team around Shaquille O'Neal. Now, as a reminder, I have taken the top 5 payrolls in the NBA, averaged them out. That number is $195 million. That's my budget to create a team using today's NBA players with real salaries and a former superstar of the past. In this episode's build-around, we are going to build a modern NBA team around Boston Celtics legend Bob Cousy. For kids that don't know, Bob Cousy won a bunch of NBA championships, was an MVP, led the league in assists for 8 straight seasons from 1953 to 1960. Bob Cousy is an icon in the NBA, one of the greatest players of his era. Here's the thing with Bob Cousy. Yes, he led the NBA in assists for 8 straight seasons, but he also took a lot of shots. From 1952 to 1961, he took somewhere between 17 and 21 shots a game. He also never shot over 40% from the field in any season in his career. So I clearly need shooting. I need shooting around Bob Cousy. 3-point shooting, I'm putting that at a premium in building around him. I need a rim runner and rim protection. Bob Cousy, I picture Bob Cousy in today's NBA pushing the pace, a lot of get-aheads, a lot of throw-ahead passes. I need guys who can run out in transition, who can spot up in transition. We're going to be a fast-paced, transition-based team that relies on 3-point shooting and shots at the rim. For Bob Cousy's salary, I thought about giving him the Supermax, same deal as Shaq and MJ. They both, of course, had Steph Curry's salary, the highest paid player in the NBA this year at $51 million. Bob's contract, I'm going to do a little bit differently. He is on a max contract. I'm using prime Bob Cousy here. He's on the second contract for him. So he signed a rookie max extension, but in a stroke of genius, I decided not to include language around making the All-NBA team. So he's making the normal rookie max extension. He's essentially making Desmond Bane's contract. Desmond Bane, on average, will make about $39 million a year. So for the purposes of this exercise, Bob Cousy will have a salary of $39 million. Again, I want to play in transition. I want to play fast. And I want a guy who can knock down open threes. I also feel like when the game does slow down, I need self-creators in the half court. So for backcourt partner for Bob Cousy, I need Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey, of course, I'm cheating a little bit here today. Tyrese Maxey is still on his rookie deal. He was picked in the 20s in the draft, so he doesn't have a big salary. The dude's about to get paid, but this season, he's only making $4.3 million. So my starting backcourt has a total salary of $43 million. All right, my wing players. I'm going to go with Paul George. Paul George, of course, great 3-point shooter, very good defender, can play off the ball, can play on the ball. Paul George making $45 million. For my other wing spot, I'm going to go with LeBron James. LeBron James, one of the best transition players in NBA history. Outstanding season this year, shooting the basketball. He was well over 40% on catch and shoot threes. For the year, he shot 41% from three. LeBron is making $47 million. A lot invested in my wings. A lot invested in my wings. So far, I've got Bob Cousy, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, LeBron James. I want a starting center that can shoot threes. I want a starting center that can defend. I'm not even going to say multiple positions. I'm going to say multiple spaces on the floor at once. I think you know where I'm going here, and I think based on my budget so far, you know where I'm going. My starting center on this team is Victor Wembanyama. Number 1 pick in the draft last year, Victor Wembanyama is making a little over $12 million a year. That is my starting five. Bob Cousy, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, LeBron James, and Victor Wembanyama. I want to start my bench with a front court position because I feel like I need a defensive anchor when Wembanyama's off the floor, a very intelligent, highly skilled player that is very accepting of a less prominent role, somebody who's, I don't know, just like the ultimate professional and someone who can also make threes. Al Horford shot 42% this year, still has a lot of defense left in him, super pros pro. I'm going with Al Horford. He's making $10 million a year this year. Here's the thing with Maxey. He can also play on the ball. So when Bob Cousy's on the bench, I'm going to stagger Maxey and him. Maxey will play on the ball. I really just want a lot of shooting on this team. So to round out my bench, I'm going to go with another Boston Celtics player in Sam Hauser. Sam Hauser shot 42.4% from three this year. Sam Hauser makes $1.9 million this year. I feel like I'm getting bargains today. I'm getting bargains. The last player to round out this is a player that maybe not a lot of NBA fans are familiar with, but had a really solid season both in Utah and in Detroit after being traded there. Simone Fontecchio. Simone Fontecchio for the season shot over 40% from three on 5 attempts a game. In Detroit, he averaged over 15 points a game, almost 43% from three on over 6 attempts. And actually, I had a Utah game prior to the trade, and I asked Will Hardy about him. And Will said, he's a better defender than I thought, and he's big. He's got size. So again, bringing some of that size, length on the defensive end, plus the shooting off the bench. That is my 9-man rotation. Bob Cousy, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, LeBron James, Victor Wembanyama, Al Horford, Sam Hauser, Simone Fontecchio. How do you guys think this team would stack up around my MJ team and my Shaq team? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's welcome in Josh Appelbaum. Josh, how are we doing today, man?
We're doing great, JJ. I mean, I'm not as busy as you, but NBA playoffs, it's great. We got NHL playoffs. Weather's getting better, so great time to be betting on sports.
I know you wanted to talk about Celtics and Nuggets currently have the best odds to win the NBA championship. Celtics at plus 125, Nuggets at plus 215, Thunder third best odds plus 850, and Timberwolves at plus 1100. And that's where I wanted to go. They looked really good against the Phoenix Suns defensively. So many weapons, so many perimeter guys that can affect you with their physicality and length. Gobert, of course, on the back line. Anthony Edwards put together some incredible two-way performances. His playmaking in that series was outstanding. The Denver Nuggets, in that second round, I want some games in that series because I think that's going to be potentially the best second-round matchup. The defending champs going against the Timberwolves. A number of Nuggets players said last year during their run, the Nuggets gave them a lot of the Timberwolves gave them a lot of problems, and that was without the sixth man of the year, Nas Reed, and that was without an all-defense type player in Jaden McDaniels, who we saw what kind of impact he had at times in that series against the Phoenix Suns. So that's potentially an incredible second-round series, and I do believe the Timberwolves are a tough matchup. I'm just looking at the Wolves right now as sort of that sleeper title contender, and it's because of their defense and it's because of the play of Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, JJ. So this was going to be a 2-part question for you. So you kind of answered the second part for me. Is there a team outside of Boston and obviously Denver that can challenge for the NBA title? So I'm with you. In terms of looking at the T-Wolves right now, if you think they can win it all, they're plus 1,100. I mean, that's a pretty good payout. They have the 4th best odds. Only the Celtics, Nuggets, and then OKC at plus 850 has better odds than the Minnesota Timberwolves. You also look at the Wolves, just can they win the West? Can they make it to the finals? They're plus 500. Again, only the Thunder plus 340. And if you look at Denver right now, they're pretty much even around plus 100 or minus 110 at some shops here. But if we can put that to the side, JJ, I want to ask you specifically about Celtics and Nuggets. we saw in March Madness, obviously, chalk came through with UConn and a lot of these top teams that were expected to go deep. They ended up going deep. It was a weird March Madness where a lot of chalk favorites did very well. So let's just assume, which is probably wrong. It's never a good thing to assume. But is there a way to take advantage of, if we think what's going to happen is going to happen, Celtics and Nuggets meet on a collision course? My question to you is, who do you like in that potential matchup? Because the Celtics, obviously, start to finish this regular season with the best record, bringing in Porzingis and obviously Drew Holiday really transformed that team. Now you're banking on Tatum and Brown to really take them to the mountaintop here. But if you're looking at a hypothetical exacta, so DraftKings gives you this option. We can bet so many different ways, teams to win it all, series prices, but there's an exacta here of these two teams facing off. And you could bet right now the Celtics to beat the Nuggets at plus 370, bet 100, you're going to get 370 back in your 100 you risk, or Denver to beat Boston at plus 390. Now you flip it the other way. If you just bet Celtics to win it all, they're only plus 125. Denver's plus 215. So if we think these two teams are going to match up, as a bettor, you're probably better off playing this exacta and picking, one or the other here to beat their opponent with a better price. But just your thoughts on, if your T-Wolves don't come through, JJ, and we see the chalk play each other.
I didn't say the Timberwolves are going to win.
How do you cap that series?
I like that the odds are pretty similar here in that series. Because I look at that series as a little bit of a chess match between Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics and Michael Malone and Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. We always talk about Nikola Jokic just like downloading coverages and reads and court mapping and just like making plays in real time. It only takes a couple possessions for him to figure it out. Joe Mazzulla would mix up his game plan night to night. You might see Drew Holiday on him to start. You might see Jaylen Brown. You might play him straight up with Kristaps Porzingis. You just never know with Joe. I probably would say my sort of potential X factor in that series is when games are close. I feel very confident that the Denver Nuggets can create good offense by going to two-man action with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Now, the variable on that, of course, is Jamal Murray's health. He's been a little banged up throughout the season. I believe it's shin splints, and I know he had a calf issue earlier in the year. So his health is really important for their overall championship odds. But my belief in the Nuggets is grounded really in Nikola Jokic and my belief in the two-man game at the end of a fourth quarter. They can generate good offense time and time again. We've seen last 3 minutes with the Celtics. They can get a little stagnant. That's really what I think could be the potential variable in all this if those two teams were to meet in the NBA Finals. And that's not to say, by the way, that the Celtics could not potentially, shoot 45 threes a game and make 18 to 20 and win that series 4-1. My only point is in a close game, that could be the X factor where you have 3 or 4 close games in a 6 or 7 game series, and it's the Nuggets who execute better down the stretch.
Yeah, I can just tell you, JJ, as a Celtics fan, I'm born and raised Massachusetts, live in Boston. Talk radio, got really nervous with the Celtics losing game 2 against Miami. Here we go again. They're a 14.5-point favorite with no Jimmy Butler, and they lose outright. So every time the Celtics, you feel like, hey, they're finally figuring out. Sometimes they take a step back. Now, again, they played great in game 3 to grab that 2-1 series lead, and you feel like everything's on track again. But remember, the Celtics were 0-2 against Denver in the regular season, and that's been a kind of a bugaboo of Boston. In the last possession here, usually it's Tatum dribbles it 21 times and does a Paul Pierce fadeaway 3, and he hasn't really been making a lot of these. So the coaching, the experience, and of course, having to go to Denver with the altitude, that's always a disadvantage for visiting players too. So again, it's a chalky year in a lot of sports. Obviously leading up with UConn here, maybe the Celtics win this whole thing. They have been the best team wire to wire. But to me, if you're looking at value, and that's what bettors are always looking for, not what you expect to happen, but the price of the number, man, it's hard not to like the Nuggets plus 215, pretty much even money to win the West, JJ. I think that'll be a fascinating series. And maybe it goes 7. Maybe you do a spread like plus 1.5, just take the dog in that matchup. But I'm very much looking forward to it. And maybe the Celtics will finally get it done this season.
Or maybe they'll play the Timberwolves. And that's the beautiful thing about sports. We don't know. We don't know. Josh, always fun, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, JJ.
All right. Thanks. This has been another episode of Islands in the League presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. As always, thank you for watching.